Sí, gracias, Emilio. Compañeras, compañeros, amigas y amigos, primera disculpa, pero voy a hablar hoy en inglés, principalmente para evitar un masacre del idioma castellano. Voy también a hablar de una perspectiva UITA, es decir, un perspectiva global. Let me first say how much I appreciate the chance to spend some time here talking about and thinking about one of the key challenges of our times. The organisation I represent, the IUF UITA, is an international federation of unions from around the world in the food, agricultural and tourism sectors, all sectors deeply affected by sustainability and climate change issues, not least, for example, the complex, misdirected Brazil and US-led rush to biofuels, despite its impact on food security, an issue that's been mentioned here more than once during these 2 days. We have in the IUF over 370 unions, of which the UGT Commerce, Hotel, Gaming and Tourism Union is one, and we represent a membership of a little over 10 million workers around the world, within which are a little over 1 million directly involved in parts of the tourism sector, notably hotel workers. I want to thank our affiliate here for taking up the issue in such a visionary way on today, the World Day of Tourism, but also yesterday. And to thank the Asturias region of the Union and the local authorities for participating so seriously and working so hard to prepare 2 days of difficult but critical analysis of this challenge. It's an example to many of our members elsewhere who might still make the mistake of thinking that climate change is somehow not a trade union issue. It clearly is, for many of the reasons that we heard yesterday and today. But it also clearly is because the labour movement has always taken on issues outside the narrow boundaries of the workplace. Politically, we fought for housing, for education, for social security, for political rights. We fought against discrimination. And we fought around so many other wider political causes because we understood without doing so, our work focused on the workplace would lack the oxygen, the space, and the critically fairer environment it needed to be successful. And so it should be entirely normal that we engage in this challenge, essentially like so many others, fundamentally a political challenge, and one for the very future existence of our planet. It is of course not the only challenge we face. There are many, not least in a world where inequality is growing, where obscene wealth stands side by side with over 900 million people facing hunger, and that number is rising, and where a criminally irresponsible financial sector has again proved what we've seen in other sectors before, and that is that profits are somehow always private, but debts and collapse are too often social. We get little of the profits, but we somehow always get to own a lot of the debt and most of the consequences of the failure of the free market. But that challenge, the challenge to regulate the financial criminals, is a matter for another forum. I won't repeat what others have said so much better than I could have done these past 2 days, specifically about climate change, which leaves actually not very much left to say. We've had a really impressive amount of information and input over these 2 days, and it's always difficult to absorb so much, especially since we need always to keep in mind one fundamental challenge: what we can and what we need to actually do as unions and as societies. The list of factors have been detailed over these 2 days: undeniable warming, more CO2, more water, but not everywhere, and too little water in many places, rising sea levels, more in the 20th century than in the previous 2,000 years, less snow, melting glaciers, and warming, disappearing Arctic caps all form part of an alarming puzzle. We've also heard of the complex combination that places tourism both as a cause of climate change, but also as an actual and potential victim of it, for reasons others have explained far better than I could. Sometimes these challenges can be so intimidating that one can almost feel jealous of those who were until recently, and in many ways still remain today, in denial that there is even a major problem. I never imagined envying George Bush, but it must be comforting to be able to delude oneself that there is really no problem and that nothing therefore needs to be done. I can certainly, by the way, on a light-hearted note, believe that when he was first asked about what he thought of Kyoto, his response was, "I've never met them, but I hear they make damn fine cars." No, George, that's Toyota, not Kyoto. But this is, as Al Gore famously said, one inconvenient truth we ignored for too long at our peril. And yet I believe, and I think many of our members and allies believe, that despite all the hand-bringing the world's broad political consensus is still far from where it needs to be on this issue, and particularly on the action needed. Whilst not totally in denial as such, the world's political will is certainly in denial in relation to the kind of measures that are truly and urgently needed. And these measures will not get adopted through voluntarism alone or through awareness raising alone. They will need more major political pressure, massive political courage, and will involve very tough regulatory decisions likely to impact in one way or another directly on many of our lives. But more and more of us are convinced that failure to take those steps will impact even more seriously and potentially catastrophically on the lives of our children and our children's children.